We're going to move on to the next topic, which is the January transfer window. And we'll also delve into transfers, kind of the idea of transfers in general this season and beyond. And of course, the implementation of Brexit. Because even though, particularly, yes, it affects the Premier League, I think it also affects the transfers around like other leagues as well, and whether they want to do business within the Premier League and everything. Let's talk about Brexit first of all and everything. And how do you guys feel about Brexit and how it may affect the Premier League and other leagues in general? Let's start with that.
Brexit.
The silent and everything. Actually, no. You know what?
Maybe
Maybe I should put a little bit of context when it comes to Brexit. So, some of the new Brexit rules in it. That's a pretty good idea. Yeah. Sorry about that, lads.
Yeah, you can.
So
No problem.
that's gonna be a very awkward sign. Anyway, so pretty much the rules that are in Brexit is you can't sign overseas players 18 or below now, which sucks obviously.
Okay.
They can't move to, and obviously with the whole like England moving out of the European Union, because they were part of the union, a lot of players were easy to, in Europe anyways, to go to like different countries around the world. It was not that difficult and everything. Apart from they just needed to get a work permit and whatnot. But now with the whole like point system and everything, that they can't, their European passport to come to England is invalid. They have to come in with a point system. Pretty much a maximum of 6 foreign players can be transferred at a time within each transfer window, and 3 can only be under the age of 21. Like I said before, more of a points-based system where they take into consideration that the players that are in like certain competitions and everything, and hence why they actually said that in like the Brazil league and everything, because they do have the Copa Libertadores and all those other competition and everything, to find those players in those top positions, they make the argument that it is quite easier. Well, I mean, apart from like I guess like the lower like teams in the Brazilian league and like in other parts of South America, it is going to be a little bit harder. They don't talk about Central America, which quite honestly they could. It is quite easier. Like let's say an MLS side is in the CONCACAF, they'll give a higher chance for a player to come in actually than someone that's not. And of course, yeah, like I said, the benefit more in South America and everything. But we look at this kind of methodology and everything. You look at teams in like Austria, for example, and teams like that. It's going to be way harder to get those kind of talented players and everything.
Yeah.
And some of the arguments that they put out is like it is still going to benefit many of the big teams and not like the smaller teams who are trying to build up and try to find those certain gems and everything. But how do you think it is going to impact the Premier League in general? We'll start off with that, and let's see your opinions.
I think it levels it a little in that, because most of the times you get, I don't know, 17, 16-year-olds that are coming from where, Brazil, Austria, or whatever. But most of the time they are going to the big clubs, right? Like Chelsea, Arsenal, United. I think Richarlison's one of the few exceptions. I think he went to Watford. But like a lot of the really good talents from overseas, they're like 16, end up at the big clubs. So I think like, although these rules are pretty stupid, and I do hope they make an exception for them soon enough, because I don't think Brexit's about reshaping the Premier League. It's about like, I don't know, the economy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I hope they do make an exception, but I think it will make it more competitive. At least for like the youth academies of the bigger club, it makes it more difficult for like Liverpool to go sign an Austrian or something. Now that we can't do that, I guess it makes it better for, I don't know, Bournemouth's youth academy or Southampton's youth academy.
Yeah, and that's one of the other arguments that are being made, that it is actually, theoretically speaking, should promote English talent to come up to the ranks and everything rather than using international talent and everything. There are some arguments that do say that because there's a lot of international attention in those ranks and everything, it actually makes it a little bit harder to develop those styles and everything. Like you look at different styles and everything, but because you don't have that, it doesn't maybe elevate the game. But where do you guys stand on that whole like English quota?
I like it because like
Go
not only like is it gonna
ahead,
help,
go ahead, son.
not only is it gonna help like develop English players, but it also helps like these kids coming from overseas not to flop. I guess like a lot of times you have like these 17-year-olds who are like have such huge transfer fees, and like people are saying they're the next wonder kid, and they end up coming to a club and flopping. But now, if you kind of wait till they're 21, like they kind of develop a little bit more. Like from a player perspective, you know what you're gonna get out of them when you're signing. You're not just signing for the future, and then you're gonna be able to see like how, like right now, I feel like in the Premier League, people are stuck with this. They have an international core, and then they have English players to kind of help them. But now it's going to replace that, where teams are going to sort of have to build an English core and then have international talent come to help. So I think it's just going to do great, like wonders for like kids especially, and developing talent.
Reza, what do you wanted to say about it? You actually wanted to say, you were quick to say something, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something quick, that the Premier League also added a new homegrown players rule for every club, where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, every player needs to have a minimum of 8 like homegrown players, so players that have been either signed by the club when they were really young, like 17, 18 years old, and they've grown into the team, or they're just homegrown in England, and they've played in England from a very young age. So I think it's good exposure for young talent, especially in England, where we see a lot of talent just go wasted, because we can see players like let's see, for instance, like a Jack Grealish, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we look at all of like the English talents in like an attacking midfielder position, we've got, I don't know, Jack Grealish, Mason Mount. We even have like Todd Cantwell, who plays on I think Norwich now. So Phil Foden as well, yeah. So it's good to see all these players. Yeah, Madison as well, yeah. The list goes on. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Especially in different positions. So it's good to see players get exposed, to the intensity of the Premier League from a very early age now. And it sucks that, clubs can't bring in, young players from foreign countries, but at least it helps them, further develop players for the country's national team, so that they have a better international success in the long run.
I think what's very interesting as well, when you look at players in the long run as well, you see a lot of international talent, young talent, actually moving away. You look at in Germany, for example, a lot of English talents like Sancho, Trippier. Actually, well, I know he's not a talent, but he went to Spain and everything.
Bellingham.
Bellingham. I remember. I think Reece Oxford from West Ham.
Yeah. You went
He's at Oxford, yeah.
Yeah. Mönchengladbach and everything, right? The one team that I know, or the one nation that I know that actually rather stays in their like home nation and then actually moves forward, is actually the Netherlands, who actually have a good system of like bringing like Dutch youth and everything, developing them, and they don't particularly like move away right away. They usually stay in the Dutch league for a while, develop their craft and everything, and then move to like some of the big clubs and everything. You don't like, I know Cesc Fabregas is one of the few players that are like the few exceptions and everything, and even PK, I guess. But the majority of the time, a lot of those players actually stay in their, I feel, in their country and everything to kind of develop and everything. Even like Suchek, for example, right? He was a guy that developed in the Czech league, work on his craft and everything before coming to the big leagues as well. So do you think that it is, with that kind of being said, do you think that it is like a perfectly logical way of looking at things, or do you think that still it's kind of a good idea to have like a lot of some of the youth and everything go into like these international countries? But I do think of it as this way as well, because if it does restrict to have those like homegrown talents to come up young and everything, it actually helps develop in their own league as well. So I know the Premier League is quite intense and everything, but I think restricting it to bring those people would actually bring better exposure as well. What's wrong?
To be honest, I think that is a good thing, But if you consider some, you call it as wonder kids. Like the same thing has happened to us, I guess. Us Chelsea, having Timo Werner and Kai Havertz moving in at a really young age, and right now they're not able to fit in, and they've been good, but they haven't been able to fit in. So yeah, that it doesn't make that much sense. It's either if you move them in earlier, they get more exposure to the intense Premier League.
That's actually very
We
interesting in
already
a Chelsea point of view. Actually, you look at the youth talents
yes
Chelsea has and everything. I know some of them are not like England, but majority of them are. You know, like look at the talents that come out of Chelsea and everything. And of course, like once they leave Chelsea, they actually drive to do things. So, do you think, I want to ask some of the Chelsea boys that we got here, do you think actually doing this would actually like allow you to actually bring up like certain talents and everything and actually develop them and everything? Because actually, when we look at it this season for Chelsea as well, a lot of their youth products are actually thriving rather than the ones they actually bought in.
Well, at the moment, like what we do, a lot of the time we loan out players. Like we have like a loan army. Sometimes they go to like the championship or lower leagues in England, but a lot of the time they also do go out to like other leagues, like in the Dutch league, for example, or in the German league. So I feel maybe this would hinder some of that, and it would like reduce the possibilities where they can go to thrive, because I feel any experience is crucial, like when you play in like a top league. So
But do you think?
yeah we need
Yep. Oh, yeah, go on.
we need players of that veteran status, like at least a couple of years playing in a certain league, and then they move to a different league. So yeah, we need that experience. Like Jeff said, it's crucial. Yes, it is crucial if it's like 5 or 6 years of their playing career. Like they play in a good league, like loaned out or sent away. This is signed by other teams. I think that makes sense. A few years, they need to have that experience in another team, and then when they return, they will know how to dictate the game, how to guide the game, how to motivate other players and stuff. Learning from others, right? Learning from the other coaches, the other leagues, how others play.
But does it
It
particularly
builds their
have to
mindset.
be? Does it particularly have to be in another league to do so? But bear in mind, right? Just because Brexit is happening doesn't mean that international players will stop coming. It's just that there'll be a restriction of like international players that are coming and everything, right? They could still come around in England. They could still play for like a mid-table club in England, for example, and everything. So
well, the thing is, like, it just hinders possibilities of going out on loan, because like not every single like Premier League club or even Championship club will want these players, but maybe like a team in the Dutch league or in the Portuguese league might want these type of players. So yeah, like I said, it just hinders the possibilities.
And I do want to point out as well that it actually massively, and they did talk about it as well, that it actually boosts the amount of South American chances of coming into the Premier League more than Europe, actually, surprisingly, because like some of the European talents, like in Salzburg, for example, they don't, sometimes they may not compete in like, or like in Austria and Vienna, they may not compete in like the Champions League. I think Salzburg should be okay, but like Austria and Vienna, for example, like other teams like that may hinder the progress and everything if they want to search for like a certain player from that team. So it could potentially be like the it's just the non-noticeable teams as well. So it's a very interesting as well. But I do want to impose how would it impact like the future of transfers? Like what do you think is particularly going to happen?
I also want to point out, like you said, future of transfers. I think with this rule now, like English teams especially are gonna try their best to stay away from international transfers. I think you'll see a lot more of like your Jamie Vardy stories. Like I remember Leicester, like when they signed Jamie Vardy, like when they brought up Jamie Vardy, like they still had good strikers like Slimani and Kramaric, but like obviously your English talent shone through, and then they've stuck with him. And I think like even teams like Tottenham, like where your English talent has shone through, you've kept with them. But like in the future, like I don't think like a team is gonna go out to try and buy an international striker like when you have this sort of barrier to get through or like jump over. It's much easier to maybe look for your gems in within your league maybe. And then I also want to like, this is another side of it, but like I do think that it's going to lower the quality of the Premier League and English football in general, because right now people forget like these international players that are coming in are challenging your squad and your like homegrown players to play better or play at the same level as them. Like we've talked about it, Thivian and I, before, of like how the Canadian Premier League, where they have this rule that they have to play Canadian players and you can only play a certain amount of international players. But at the same time, you're not really doing that much to develop your Canadian talent because you're just challenging them amongst themselves. And like that's at the end of the day, your international talent, it will just have played between themselves for the whole season. But when you have international come in, you're now fighting for places. You're now stepping up your game because you want to beat that next Brazilian who might take your spot, or that next German kid who might take your spot.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm gonna put an interesting twist on the things and everything. I want to look at history lane when I look at it. I remember when, or like at least I read through things when, you know, back in the day when it was the European Cup and everything, when there was a period of time when English teams had rule and everything, right? However, in terms of the international talents, like in Brazil and everything, it wasn't particularly put into like English teams. They had more like Scottish, they had more like, you know, Welsh and everything, more within the European Union rather than like abroad and everything, right? It was only like when English teams stagnated is when they got a ban, and I'm not gonna say particularly which team is the reason they got the ban, but yeah, they pretty much got a ban within the Champions League and everything, and it took time for them to really get back to those levels and everything. So I think of course, versing against the big European sides is very important and crucial to do it. But however, we actually seen like they didn't particularly had that international, like in terms of like people like way abroad, like in Brazil and everything, back in like the 80s and whatnot, for example. So do you particularly think it could actually happen that just because they don't particularly have a lot of chances and everything, they can actually build up, and it's just more important that they do verse against like a lot of teams that are international instead?
I don't think history will repeat itself in that like we get big clubs with, I don't know, a bunch of Scottish, Welsh, English players, because to be honest, nowadays English players suck. Like we get excited over literally the most painfully average players year after year after year. I'm seeing Grealish to Barcelona, Grealish to Paris. He doesn't belong anywhere near any of those teams, literally because he's English. We'll hype him to that point. And I mean, look, I really do hope this summer to do well at the Euros, but I'm done with overhyping English players. And I think when you take away all the, I don't know, foreign transfers or whatever, if they really limit it, like you guys were saying, then there's a real problem. Because, like, who was the last PFA Player of the Year winner that was English or Scottish or Welsh or something like that? It's been a while, right? It was like, who was it?
I mean,
Salah, Van Dijk, De Bruyne, Hazard, Mahrez. I don't even remember who was before that. But you have to go a really long time before it was actually an English player.
Yeah.
I think Kane will take it this time, though.
Oh yeah, when you think of the league's best
probably
names.
Kane or
If only Jordan
That's
Henderson.
why we
I think
rate
it
him
was
so
Rooney
much.
before.
Yeah. So
I think it was Rooney or someone before, I guess.
Yeah, that's so long
Yeah,
ago,
it was
right?
Rooney
That
back
was like
Yeah.
almost a decade ago. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the last one, I guess. And
watch how
it's
people
been
think
always,
I'm like pro Brexit after this. Just imposing the question alone, but hey, it's another point of view. I mean, like, I particularly I see both sides and everything in terms of like they want to improve the English quota. I get that, but what makes the Premier League unique as well, especially during the time, is that they had that kind of diversity, and that's what they kind of like tailored to as well in the beginning, to have like kind of that talent and everything. They kind of honed in that idea and everything, and now it's gonna be restricted, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to
I
get stories
also,
like Mane? Oh, go on. Sorry, Mole.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Guys,
Go on. Mole.
Yes. Also, it'd be like a story which, like, it's an English captain. If a Premier League team wins, it's an English captain who wins it, like Jordan Henderson, Terry when Chelsea won, right? Something like that. They want an English captain to win. It was who is that? Roy Keane once when they won the. I mean, Roy Keane is Irish. I don't know who else won it, but I think during those Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest when they're winning the Champions League, it should be an Englishman who lifted the trophy. So that sort of a thing can happen. Like they want Premier League standards, an Englishman can lift the Champions League.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I want to pose this question to like everyone. Like, do you think this rule is gonna lower the amount of like interest in the Premier League? Because I think what's really made the Premier League one of the biggest leagues in the world in terms of interest and fan engagement is the amount of international players. Like, I bet like all of us in this chat right now, like our favorite players are not English, despite us watching the
Right.
Premier League so often,
Yeah.
right? I don't know.
I think
feel
it'll take a lot of interest from like outside of England. Like for example, South American like football fans, they're not going to have as much interest in watching these games if they're not going to see some of their national superstars playing in the Premier League. So they're going to not have that real connection
Or in
with
Egypt,
the league
yeah.
itself. So
Like Sun, right?
yeah, for
Like
example,
England
yeah,
Sun.
Oh,
exactly.
like Korea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Salah
those
with
are all good points.
Egyptian, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, look, if the Brexit was imposed like 2 decades ago, we wouldn't have seen Thierry Henry. We wouldn't have seen Sergio Aguero coming up after Man City came into the bigger lights.
Was Monaco
We won't see
competing in like the Champions League? Monaco.
Yes, Monaco.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
Monaco
so.
at the
Yeah.
time. So maybe with Thierry
I
Henry,
think
but
so,
like
I
in
don't
terms
know.
of other like, like Conte for example, we probably wouldn't have seen him. That's a
Right.
good point because he was like way in like the second division of French league. He wouldn't
Of
he wouldn't
France,
pass. Yeah, he wouldn't pass like the points quota. So, yeah, we talk about players as well. What about managers? How would they particularly get affected by coming into the Premier League, for example?
It's a hard one, mate.
Like I said, no English manager actually has won the Premier League, which is mad.
That's a
But
crazy
do you
stat.
think this rule is going to affect them? Because I thought it was only like young players, right? Because all managers are
Yeah.
well into like their 40s, right? So wouldn't they have like permits and stuff to get a job in England?
Yeah, but like getting like let's just say a manager's in like an absurd team at the moment. I mean, obviously, I don't think you would see like managers, but let's say I don't know, like a mid-table team wants to get like this certain manager from this certain league, or like from like I don't know, like from like America or like Canada for example, like something like that, somewhere around those lines and everything. It could potentially affect them too. I don't think it's going to affect it as much as the players because obviously when you want to get a manager, you want to get a more established manager, right? You don't want to get someone that's like absurd and like things like that. But it could possibly affect like maybe mid-table or like lower end teams that want to get like a manager that's quite not particularly in an established club, but they're doing like established things at a certain team and everything and making progression, right? So it could affect them too, and not a lot of people are particularly talking about that.
I think though, like if you're a manager for like a lower team, you've probably set yourself up like in terms of your resume or CV that you've got work permits for all of these countries, so that when a call does come, like you jump at that opportunity. Like some of the bigger managers, obviously they wait till a job comes to them, but a lot of the times, like managers from lower leagues, like they have to go to or be available for certain jobs. Like they're just not first pick for like those big jobs. They have to kind of like fight their way up, or like set themselves up. So when it comes, they're available, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the only what's the word? Like exclusions that we see is like player managers that have a history with the club. They're really like, other than having established coaches that have a CV of like winning trophies or doing well with other teams, if they are not a club legend at said club, like Frank Lampard, I don't think he would have gotten that position if, say, he was a club legend at West Ham. If he spent his whole career there, he would like, just because he has that connection with the club itself. That's why he has such a big position in the club, or like in a big team.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the portfolio is main.
Yeah.
That's for the later topics.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, we talked a lot about Brexit and everything. I also wanted to kind of impose like transfers in general and talk about like kind of like journalists in general and everything. I guess we can make that into a separate topic right now.